Have you ever had a dream so vivid, so real, that when you woke up, you couldn't just quite shake that feeling that it meant something? Not like a nightmare or, those dreams where you're falling from the sky or, you show up to a meeting with like no pants on. I'm talking about like a dream that kind of just quietly changes the way that you see yourself. The one that just like plants a single question in your mind, and that question just doesn't leave and it just nags in your head. So for me, it wasn't just a dream. It became the first crack in the life I thought I was supposed to live, but I had no idea that it would be the one night's sleep that would send me on a journey that would essentially take years to understand. Welcome to Lez-B-Diverse. I'm so grateful that you're here. I am Mahal. This is a segment called Within Strength, the Road That Raised Me. It's my personal journey through, the moments that shaped me, that challenged me, and ultimately led me to the person that I am today. This isn't just my story. It's about fear, identity, healing, and learning that sometimes the answers we've been searching for have been, just quietly waiting inside of all of us all along. So let's go back. Okay, so let's talk about a moment when I was around 19 years old. So, from the outside, my life looked exactly the way everyone expected it to be. I had a boyfriend, I was doing everything right. If someone had asked me then whether I was attracted to women, I would probably laugh and say no without hesitation. Without even considering it, or at least that's what I believed. But underneath the surface, something was definitely beginning to shift. It started with dreams, not just one, several. And every one of them involved someone who had been, just one of my close friends. I'll call her Abby. The funny thing is, Abby wasn't someone I secretly obsessed with. She wasn't a crush. She wasn't someone I spent my days imagining a future with. She was literally simply just a friend. Like a friend. Okay, so Abby and I almost became friends by accident. So we lived only a few blocks away from each other. So, every morning we rode the same school bus. And she was a year older than me. So somewhere between those bus rides, shared conversations, and teenage life, she became part of my everyday routine. Even after I got my driver's license and stopped riding the bus, our friendship only grew stronger. She became one of those, rare people you naturally just trusted, the kind of friend who just listened without trying to fix you. She just made you feel safe enough to be completely yourself. Whether I had problems with boys, relationship drama, or just life in general, Abby was usually the person that I would call. Then one night, everything kind of changed. So I had a dream. Not just any dream, a romantic dream about Abby. And when I woke up, I remembered every single detail. All my life, I've always had unusually vivid dreams. It's almost like my mind records them and stores them away forever. So most people forget dreams within minutes of waking up. I seem to remember mine for years. And this one truly refused to let me go. I replayed every scene, every emotion, every question. At the time, I wrote poetry almost daily. So writing had always been how I processed emotions I couldn't explain. So I wrote everything down, thinking maybe if I could put it on paper, it would stop living inside my head. Instead, it became even more real. What terrified me wasn't the dream itself necessarily. It was what it really meant. So could I actually be attracted to women? That single question unraveled everything I thought I knew about myself, because in my mind, that wasn't even an option at that time. I had boyfriends, I liked boys, I'd been in relationship with boys. So this wasn't supposed to be a thing. Okay, look, my future was supposed to look like everyone else's, the marriage, the children, the life everyone expected me to have. So why was my subconscious telling me a completely different story? So looking back now, I realize how little exposure I had growing up. I didn't know anyone who was openly gay in, high school or whatever. So At least I didn't think I did. There were always rumors at school, people whispered, but I never really asked questions or bothered to like meet any of them. Maybe because somewhere deep down inside I didn't want the answers, or because if being gay became real for someone else, maybe I'd have to admit it becoming like real for me too, and that was definitely not gonna happen. Okay, so for several days I avoided Abby. Not because she'd done anything wrong, but because, I couldn't even look at her without remembering the dream. Eventually, she messaged me on AOL Instant Messenger. Do you guys remember that time? Yeah. So AOL IM. I'm definitely like dating myself here at this point, but we talked about the usual, the boyfriends, the summer plans, life, everything except the one thing that was literally consuming my thoughts. But, Abby knew me too well. We've been friends for a minute. So even through like the computer screen, she could tell something was wrong. She kept asking like, what's going on? And finally I admitted I'd been struggling with something. And she was like, okay, what is it? And I told her, I was like, you know what? I'm having dreams that's affecting me. And she laughed. She's like, okay, it's just a dream. But to me, it wasn't. Eventually, I told her the truth. I said, you know what? The dream is about you. Silence. She obviously wanted more. I refused. Absolutely refused, because I was convinced telling her would somehow like end our friendship. But she kept reassuring me, a dream is just a dream. It won't change anything. So me being me, I copied everything that I had written, like every detail, along with like a letter explaining why I was sending it. Then I hit send and waited. Those few minutes felt like hours. I imagined every possible outcome. Like maybe she'd never speak to me again. Maybe she thought I was weird. Maybe she thought, our friendship had been a whole lie. Or maybe, just maybe, she'd tell me she felt something with me too. I honestly had no idea what was going to happen, but finally she responded. Okay, so obviously she had questions. So she was like, why her? Had this happened before with someone else? What did I think it meant? The truth? I honestly didn't know. Like, I was trying to understand myself while explaining myself to someone else. Obviously the biggest surprise wasn't what she said, or just how that conversation went. It was that she stayed. She still believed a dream was just a dream. And honestly, maybe she needed to believe that. Maybe I did too. Life moved on. We stayed friends. We talked about, again, the usual, our boyfriends, life, weekend plans, whatever. Eventually, college took us in, a completely different direction. And like so many friendships, distance quietly did what distance always does. Years later, social media pretty much just crossed our paths again. So one day I asked her, do you remember when I basically came out to you? She looked confused. She didn't remember it all. And that moment, the one that completely changed my life, barely existed in hers. Probably a good thing. So surprisingly, that didn't hurt. It taught me something I'll never forget, actually. So sometimes the moments that redefine our entire lives are simply ordinary Tuesdays in someone else's. Reflecting and looking back now, I don't think the dream was ever really about Abby. I think Abby just kind of represented, just someone safe. She was someone my heart trusted enough for my subconscious to finally ask the questions I'd spent years avoiding. The dream wasn't really trying to tell me who I was to love. It was trying to tell me to just basically stop running from myself. Sometimes our minds protect us before we're just really ready. Sometimes our hearts whisper long before they scream. Mine started with a dream, whether that was a coincidence or just curiosity or destiny. It opened a door I would spend years learning how to walk through. So if you've ever questioned who you are, if you've ever been afraid of what your own heart was trying to tell you, I want you to know something. You are not alone. Some of the hardest conversations we will ever have aren't with our families. our friends, or even society. They're the quiet conversations we have literally with ourselves. Thank you for spending this chapter of my journey with me tonight. If this story resonated with you, I'd love for you to subscribe, leave a review, and just share this episode with someone who you think might need to hear it. And if you've ever had a moment that quietly changed the direction of your life, I'd love to hear your story, so please reach out. Because sometimes healing begins the moment we realize someone else has walked a similar road. So until next time, I'm Mahal. This is Within Strength, the road that raised me, here on Lez-B-Diverse. Remember, every road, even the painful, confusing, unexpected ones, can lead you exactly where you're meant to be. Peace and love, everyone. Thanks a lot.